So let me welcome on board Kumar Rakesh from BNP Paribas and firstly talk about what really is the anticipation from the auto pack. Kumar, hi, great to have you on the show. Help us understand what kind of a picture can we really expect for the monthly sales from September, because passenger vehicles in particular clearly have seen a bit of a dip down and a gradual one at that in the past few months.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me on the show. September month half of the month would have gone into the auspicious period, which is called Pitru Paksh, falling in this year in September month itself. So for most of the segments of the automotive industry, we would expect much weaker number. Last year, a bulk of it was in the month of October. So there would be a base effect which will make the sales number look quite weak. And hence, I think that is something which investors would be preparing themselves for, that there could be a weaker set of number coming into September. That also implies that October month becomes quite critical for the industry because most of the festivals are falling in October and bulk of the festival demand will show up in the month of October instead of getting spread across September and October the way it was last year. So going into the September sales numbers, I think expecting much weaker set of numbers could be fair. Within that, passenger vehicle industry, which you spoke about, has been moving towards low single digit, flattish sort of a number so far, financial year to date, if we see. And that we think is largely a reflection of pent-up demand drying up and the wholesale and demand now adjusting to new levels. It takes a few months for the automotive companies to gradually adjust their production, and during that period of time, they typically end up with higher inventory, which is what we saw in the industry as well, that they ended up with a little higher inventory, and the discounting also had gone up. So I think we are in that transition period in which the supply and demand is adjusting to new normal in the passenger vehicle industry.
Right. The other thing I wanted to talk about specifically is tractors, because, not just when it comes to autos, but the entire segment of the market is really betting big on the sectors which are going to see a revival thanks to a normal monsoon. And of course, the rural economy as well making a comeback. So, specifically for the farm division of Motown, what is your expectation?
Yeah, so at the start of the calendar year, we were seeing some weak numbers coming through in the tractors, but over the last few months, we have started seeing improvement in the tractor numbers as well. We are getting into the new harvesting season. August, September, October typically is a stronger month for tractor demand. And these months would be critical to gauge how strong the recovery has been. And we would be looking very closely at the numbers. But would be fair to expect that a mid-single digit sort of a growth for this financial year should be doable for the tractor segment. And some initial signs or indications of that should start reflecting in the coming months as well. In the second half, the base also starts becoming a little more favorable, and that should also help the tractor sales growth numbers.
Wondering what the outlook is then on the Ola Electric IPO as well, given the kind of investor interest that we have seen and the response, which has been pretty phenomenal. What does this spell as, what it means for the upcoming IPOs within this space and, of course, for the existing players?
So we think that the electrification in the two-wheeler industry is a structural trend. And we have seen the indications of that whenever the incentives have been removed and the immediate falling month, while penetration fell, but with every passing month, the penetration has been improving. Even in the month of September, when we are tracking the penetration for electric two-wheelers have moved up. So electrification definitely is a structural trend. There would, of course, be some level of consolidation, which we have already seen in the industry. And now we have some of the key players who have come out as winners of that consolidation. Now, market share within those is something which we'll have to watch out closely, because all said and done, the industry is still only about 6-7% of the total two-wheeler industry. So we haven't reached the mass level, haven't reached across the country driven electrification trend as yet. And as that starts happening, those are far more traditional buyers for whom the resale value, the after sale service, word of mouth, the traditional parameters for buying any vehicle matters far more. And the companies which fare better in those parameters will possibly continue to maintain the share which we are seeing currently, or possibly increase as well. So I think there's while a lot of dynamics has already played out in the electric two-wheeler industry, a lot is yet to play out in the coming years as this penetration continues to move up. It would be fair to expect that the market share can continue to churn between the players.
But who will be the eventual winner? Will it go towards the EV players eventually, which is 5-7% changes happens every year, and then in 10 years it will look like a stark difference? Or do you think the domination in ICE will continue? I have two examples here. What has happened to China and what is currently happening in other Asian countries. In China, EV is a success. In other Asian countries, EV is not such a success.
So there is a difference when you're talking about rest of the market. It's the passenger vehicle electrification. In India, we are talking about the two-wheelers electrification in this conversation. And the two-wheelers doesn't have so much of dependence on the charging infrastructure, or the price difference between an ICE and EVs are not as high as it is in passenger vehicles. And that's why we think that the structural trend towards electrification for the two-wheeler should continue. Of course, there is an argument and debate about what that means by 2030. We think that the electrification of two-wheelers would still reach only about 30%, which could be conservative by some standards. But that trend will definitely be structural. The winners out of this transition, as we were discussing earlier, I think we have already seen a large part of the consolidation of the industry. So some of the winners have already been established. What is not established as yet, in our view, is the market share between those players. Who would be having a better or lower market share than today will be determined a lot by the kind of products which they are selling, the kind of service they are offering, and the word of mouth which gets spread. These things will establish the resale value of the products. So I think those things are yet to be established in the industry.
How important is the importance of rural economy for two-wheelers? Because all of us thought, at least I thought, that two-wheeler and rural economy, they're connected to each other. But this year, the rural economy has not recovered, but two-wheeler sales have recovered. Two-wheeler sales have started recovering even pre-monsoon. So this entire good old theory which we have is that rural India has to do well for two-wheelers to do well, and for rural India to do well, monsoon has to be great.
That's a very good observation, Nikunj, actually. So this demand recovery, if you notice, started off from last festival season itself. So now we have seen almost a year of stronger two-wheeler demand, while the rest of the parameters for rural economy may not be indicating similar strong buoyancy. And we think the answer lies in the financing. Over the last 1.5 years, if you see, two-wheeler financing has dramatically increased, and that has increased the addressable market for two-wheelers. And in any of the segments wherever the financing has gone up, we have seen strong demand, smartphones being one of the examples for that. So we think that is one of the drivers which has driven this strong growth. I'm not saying that's a driver which cannot sustain, but that's definitely something which has dramatically aided to the volume growth which we are seeing in the industry and the decoupling which you are talking about.
Okay, great to have you then on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time out today, Kumar, and speaking with us.
There comes a time when your heart calls for you to arise. Plant your feet solid into the ground. Decide your own limits. And then break right through them. Become something more. It's my time to rise.